perseverance. And about a month or so ago, I was traveling over to Denver, and as I came out of the tunnels, the Eisenhower tunnels onto the eastern slope side of the mountain there, one of the things that I noticed as I was coming down the mountain, and I'm sure many of you guys have seen this before, is all the little yellow little piles of dirt that seem to be like just kind of springing up out of the ground over there. And what that is that's reminiscent of the gold rush days. And I thought about that, and I thought about perseverance, and one of the things that Aspen keeps putting out there for us. And in doing that, it reminded me of a story that I had read in a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And as that story kind of goes, you know, the gold rush days were happening. They were going on. The word was spreading like wildfire. In fact, as you pass by Idaho Springs, there's a sign there that says, Idaho Springs, where the gold rush began. Word began to spread like wildfire across the United States about the gold rush happening in Colorado. It was hitting Texas. It was hitting Oklahoma. It was hitting Kansas. And it went all the way to Georgia and even Maryland. And in Maryland, it fell upon the ears of a man. And when he heard about it, he dreamt about what he could do for his family, how he could help his family, the things that he could make happen. He thought about a new house for his wife. He thought about pretty new dresses that she could wear. He thought about walking down the street with a cane and a top hat with his wife on his arm, just walking along, greeting the folks. He thought about the nice clothes that he could buy for his boys and how he could send them to the best schools and they could graduate from the greatest colleges in the eastern coast. And at that point, in that moment, he made the decision. He made the decision to go to Colorado, to seek his fortune, to find that gold so he could do these things for his family. Now, he knew it would be a long journey. He knew it was going to take time. He knew there would be a lot of hard work at it. But he decided to do it. He made the decision and he left and he went to Colorado. That takes several weeks. We're talking about horse and buggy, horse and covered wagon in order to get there. You figure maybe 30, 50 miles a day that he can travel. So days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. But you know, as he was going through Kansas, he started to top over one little hill. And off there in the distance, he could see the Rocky Mountains out there. And that got him excited. He pushed his horses probably harder than he should have. But by that night, he was in Denver. And once he got to Denver, he made the decision that he should probably do some research on the area. He should probably find out, you know, where are people finding gold? Where are there already claims at? He went to the assayer's office and he says, hey, ask them, he says, where's a good place for me to go look? And then he made the decision to go up in the mountains and survey the mountains, survey the areas, take a look around. And finally, he found a spot that to him, he thought looked good. And so he decided to go ahead and file a claim on that. He went back down into Denver, filed his claim, back up there to the property, to the area, and he set up camp. And as he sat by the fire that night, he recalled those dreams that he had been thinking about. He recalled about the nice house for his wife and the pretty dresses and how if they had all that kind of extra money, they could be donating to their church. They could be tithing and giving to their church and giving to charities. And in the morning, with pick in one hand and shovel in the other, he made the decision to start digging. Several weeks went by. This is hard work with only a pick and a shovel and a bucket to tote the dirt out. And for weeks, nothing happened. But you know, one morning, as he was swinging that pick, he swung that pick and bam, into the rock. And that pick got lodged in behind a rock and he was pulling and yanking at it. And all of a sudden it broke loose. And as it broke loose, he was pulling so hard he fell back onto his butt. And there he sat in a dimly lit mine with only the light of a lantern, looked up at the wall, and there he saw it. It was gold. He saw the gold. He picked up the lantern, he got closer, he reached up and he touched it. He got so excited, he knocked out a little piece, and as he looked at it, he thought, man, this is going to be hard. This is going to be hard work to get all of this gold out of the mine. He had seen how other miners were doing it, how they were working their claims. They had tracks, they had ore carts, they were shoring up their walls with timber. He knew that at this point in time right now, he couldn't do that. He knew he needed funding and he needed help. So he chipped out a little piece of that gold and he stuck that little piece of gold in his pocket. And then he decided to cover up his mind. He covered up the entrance to his mind, and he decided to go back home. When he went back home, it wasn't because he felt dejected or anything like that. He went back home to let people know what he'd found. He went back home to ask for help, and he went back home to ask for investors. He showed them that little piece of gold, that nugget that he had already dug out, and he told them there was so much more. He solicited the help of his nephew. His nephew's name was Darby. Darby said he would love to come to Colorado with him and help. He solicited some investors, and he gathered several $1,000s worth of money in order to pay for the expenses that it would take to start really working that mine properly. And he decided to buy a lot of supplies right there in Maryland. They decided that they would fill their wagon with everything that they could: beans, potatoes, rice, flour, sugar, salt, because he could buy them so much cheaper right there in Maryland than he could in Denver. See, the prices were so inflated in Denver. It reminds me of my wife and I, we go to Fort Lauderdale every year for like the past 5 to 6 years. Our first year we spent so much money because we didn't know. We always thought that, seafood would be really inexpensive on the coast. But it turns out it's really not. It can be, depending on where you go. But we went down to South Beach, Miami. That's the place to go. South Beach, Miami, that's the happening place. That's where all the people go. And it is a beautiful beach. It's a beautiful strip. The road that's right there alongside the beach is just fabulous. Stores and restaurants and bars. It came along about dinner time. We'd been on the beach all day, and we thought, we'll go up here to one of these restaurants and we'll have ourselves some dinner. When we went inside, we sat down at this little restaurant, and the waiter comes up, very polite, very, very courteous man, told us about the special. The special was lobster tail, crab cakes, and rice. We said, yeah, that sounds really good. So we'll have the special. It was me, my wife, and my cousin. We'd been staying with my cousin's house, and because of his hospitality, we've been paying all of his expenses. We've been buying his drinks, buying his food, taking care of him because he was taking care of us. Well, this particular evening, we were there having dinner. It was excellent food. The waiter came back and asked us, as any good waiter would you like some dessert? We were all like, oh, we're so stuffed. No, we'll just take the check. Thank you. The waiter came back with a check. It's in one of those little fold-up leather kind of binders. My cousin reached out and he took the check. He said, you know what? You guys have been paying for this. He says, let me take it this time. Let me buy this one. And we said, okay. I looked at the wife and we said, yeah, okay, that sounds good. So he picked up the little binder thing. He opened it up like that. He looked and his eyes got big as saucers. He closed it. He put it down on the table. And I said, dude, what's wrong? And he just kind of looked at me, and I looked over at him, and I grabbed that little check in there, and I opened it up, and I did the same thing. My eyes got big as saucers. I closed it, and I put it down. That special for 3 of us was $265. 3 specials and a drink. $265. When the waiter came back, I said, dude, what gives here? Why is this so expensive? We're right here on the coast. This is seafood. He said, sir, you're at South Beach, Miami. And he turned and walked away. See, the same thing was happening with Darby's uncle. He was in Denver, Colorado. He was just outside of Denver, Colorado. And the further outside of Denver you got, the closer to the mining operations you got, the more expensive everything got. So he loaded up that wagon to the gills. Everything he possibly could, he put in that wagon, because he could save some money on that. The 2 of them set out again for Colorado. Again, it's months of travel, a heavily laden wagon. They had concerns with renegade Indians and bandits that could be on the road. But as they're going along, they're talking, they're having a good time. Darby's uncle is telling them all about the mine. He's telling them all about how once they're in Kansas, that they're going to just rise up over one of these little rolling hills, and off in the distance, we're going to see those Rocky Mountains. And as we get closer, they're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and higher. He says, you're not going to believe it. You've never seen anything like it. And the day came that they rolled over the hill, and there were those Rocky Mountains. And Darby's uncle was right. The closer they got, the more those Rocky Mountains got bigger and bigger. It was unfathomable how high they reached up into the sky. They rolled into Denver and on up to their camp. They got everything set up. Darby and his uncle, they sat there at the fire. And again, they thought about all the things that they could do with the newfound fortune that they were about to dig out of the ground. So in the morning, they began digging. They started digging. The soil was pretty loose. It didn't take them very long to get inside the mine. And once they got inside, there it was. That bright, bright, shiny gold. Now, this was going to take a lot of work. They had to get all of the debris cleared out of the mine. Then there was buying the track, the timber to lay the track on, the timber to shore up the walls inside the mine, the ore cart. They had to buy drilling equipment, dynamite. All these things were a necessity. You know, back in those days, picture, if you will, you're inside of a little tunnel of a mine, and the face of the wall where you're going to be digging is maybe 5, 6 feet wide, maybe 7 feet high. And all you have to drill a hole into the solid rock with is a bar about 3 or 4 feet long, kind of pointy on one end. And then you smack that with a sledgehammer. See the way that worked? One man would hold the rod like that with 2 hands, and the other man would hit it with the sledgehammer. That takes trust right there. But the other man would hit it with the sledgehammer. Pow! He'd nail that thing. And then the first man that's holding the rod would have to give it a twist, and then pow! And then twist and pow! How long do you think it would take to drill a hole, one hole, a foot deep, let alone 6? Once they got the holes drilled, they would have to set the dynamite inside, run the fuse out. They'd light the fuse, they'd sit outside the mine, they'd wait, and they'd wait, and then boom! The explosion would happen. They could feel the ground shake. Smoke and dust and debris would come rolling out the mine. They'd wait a little bit, and they'd go inside, and they'd start clearing out the debris. They'd painfully go through each and every single piece and look for the gold ore within it. Soon they had mined through the little vein of gold that the uncle had found, and it started to run out a little bit. They'd been there for some time, and the supplies that they had brought with them started running out. So now they had to start buying supplies there, the expensive ones. This consumed the gold that they had already mined out. And it wasn't long after that they decided maybe they better turn and go a different direction. So they made the decision. They said, let's go back to where we found the gold, and we'll go to the left. And they started drilling and blasting and digging and hauling the rock out of the mountain. And weeks turned into days, and days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and they still found no gold. And they decided, well, maybe the gold went the other way, so they made the decision to go to the right this time, and they went to the right. And again, days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and there was no gold. Finally, dejected and feeling like they had failed and lost out, they made the decision that, maybe that's all there was. Maybe we should cut our losses and go back home. They came out of the mine, and the next morning, they decided to go down into town. They knew of a junk dealer down in town. They decided to go into town, and they talked to the junk dealer about, what could you give us for our equipment here, and our mine too. They negotiated with the junk dealer, and he gave them a decent price, and they went back home. They had enough money to just barely pay off their debts. Now the junk dealer, The junk dealer had been working in this area for a long time. He'd seen a lot of people come in, and he'd seen a lot of people dig their mines and then close their mines, and he'd buy their equipment from them. The junk dealer knew so many people in the area. He knew the owners of the big mining operations that were going on in the area. He would take this equipment that he bought from the failed mines, and he would take it and sell it to the big mines at a decent price. It's still good equipment. And he made a good living at it. But he'd never actually bought a claim before. Now, he'd seen the big mining companies, he'd seen them buy claims, he'd seen them buy them and then turn them around, and all of a sudden they're producing gold again. So he thought, there's got to be something to this. Now, knowing the owners of several of these mines, the big mining operations, he went to them and he asked them, he says, maybe you could help me with my mine. He says, I got a good feeling about it. I think there might still be some gold in there, but I bought it from these guys and they went back to Maryland. And one by one, each one of those big mining operations, those owners, each one of them told him, no, I don't think so. But we'll buy it from you. Well, that got him to thinking even more that, if you'll buy it from me, it's got to be worth something. So he decided, you know what, I'm gonna keep asking. I'm going to keep asking around and see who will help me out. Finally, one owner that he went to, he told him, he says, you know what? He said, you've always shot straight with me. You've always given me a good price on the equipment. He says, I like you. We've got a good business relationship going. He says, I tell you what I'll do. I'll give you the name of my mining engineer. You can hire him. And he'll let you know if there's anything valuable in that mine. So the junk dealer, he's like, got all excited. He says, okay, yeah. He said, so he goes down to town, he hires the mining engineer. And after negotiating a price, the engineer went to work. Now the engineer, he went up to the mining area. He examined the geological features of the mountain. He examined the fault lines within the mine. He examined the composition of the rock. And he made out his report. The junk dealer received the report, and it said something like this. It said, dear sir, I have concluded my analysis on your mine. It is my determination that if you will continue digging 3 feet or less in this direction, in this particular shaft, that you will find gold. Well, the junk dealer was elated. What do you think he did? Absolutely. He went in there and he started digging. And he didn't go more than 3 feet, and he hit a mother lode of gold and became a multi-millionaire. See, each one of these people, each one of these groups of people went down a different path based on the decisions that they made. Every decision, big or small, leads you down a path. You are where you are today because of series of decisions that you have made, some of which you can date back all the way to junior high or high school. I know I can tell you about some decisions that I made. I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for a decision that I made back in high school. See, in high school, I wasn't that good of a kid, really. I was kind of a ruffian. They called us the hoods back then. Some of you may know that term. I was a bit of a pothead. I didn't go to classes unless I absolutely had to. I ditched all the time. I did graduate. But when I was a senior in high school, I looked at the path that I was on. And I said to myself, if I continue on this path, where am I going to end up? I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I'm probably going to end up either homeless or in jail or maybe worse, prison, or even dead at a really young age. And so I thought, if I turn things around a little bit and I go down this other path, what's going to happen with me? Things could look a lot better. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, I joined the Marine Corps. What a huge, magnificent decision that was. It turned my life around. Now, when I joined the Marines, I didn't know what kind of a project or job, thing to get into. They call it an MOS. I didn't know what to get into, so I decided on heavy equipment. Yeah, teach me about heavy equipment. Well, that decision after the Marine Corps led me into construction. Construction led me into trucking. As I was in trucking and construction, I ended up making the decision to buy my own truck. And I went out into the oil field. As I went out into the oil field, I made incredible, crazy money. And then we all know what happened with the oil field. And in 2008, 2010, it started petering out, and then it was almost completely gone. It was then when a buddy of mine came up to me and he says, hey, he says, I think I found a way that we can make some money. And so I made the decision to join a direct sales company. When I joined that direct sales company, everybody in that company told me, they said, if you want to make it in this company, if you want to make money in this company, you got to develop yourself. You got to start doing personal growth, personal development. He said, because your income will match your personal development. And so in doing that, I started reading books like crazy. And then as I read these books, I started wanting to see these speakers. And so I went and saw these speakers. I saw speakers like Andy Andrews and Darren Hardy. And I would walk out of those auditoriums feeling so good. And I thought, man, I would love to make people feel like that. And so I joined a group called Toastmasters. Toastmasters teaches you the ins and outs of speaking, the do's and don'ts of public speaking. And because of those decisions that I made clear back in high school up to today, that's why I'm here right now speaking to you guys today. So let me ask you something, climbers. What decisions are you making? What decisions are you making today? Are you deciding to make a list before you go out? Are you deciding to qualify your leads? Are you deciding to pick up the phone and actually dial? And when you dial, are you deciding to push send? Are you deciding to walk in the door of that business? Are you deciding to talk to the person at the counter? Make the decision. Make the decision, because the decisions that you make today will determine where you end up in the future. Oh, and don't worry about Darby. You see, when Darby got back to Maryland, he heard about the success of the junk dealer. He heard that how the decision that he and his uncle had made to come back home cost them millions of dollars, and how the junk dealer profited from that decision. He understood then about perseverance, about sticking to it. All of these things came to fruition for him because he went on to become a multimillionaire. And of all things, selling insurance. Aspen, back to you.